How are we all doing tonight? So first off, I want to apologize ahead of time. When I went to do the shopping for this stream, I actually found out that turkey breast is remarkably expensive right now. I wonder why. So there was a last-minute alteration to our menu to stay under the budget we had set last time. That being said, I still think that our meal tonight is going to be a really good one. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. First thing we're going to be cooking tonight is a Asian roasted broccoli. This is a really fun, really tasty, sweet recipe that I find is just a fun way to prepare broccoli. Gets great flavor, and broccoli is always just one of those dishes that is very easy to work with flavor-wise, for the obvious reason of it being broccoli. So first off, what we're going to need a 1 clove of minced garlic, which we've got now. Let me glance at my recipe book real quick. First thing you're going to want to do, though, is preheat your oven to 355 degrees Fahrenheit if you have convection. Otherwise, you're going to want to do 400 degrees Fahrenheit if you can't do convection. So, you need 1 clove of minced garlic. Fresh garlic always works best, but is by no means required for this recipe. I just like it. You need 1/4 cup of a low-density oil. That's your olive oils, your coconut oils. Tonight I will be making use of some avocado oil because I happen to have it on hand. It won't largely affect the flavor profile of our meal, but I just need to make use of it before it turns and I lose money, which is always bad. So you want to get your broccoli in a mixing bowl like this, frozen or fresh. If it is frozen like we have tonight, there will be additional time for the cooking process, but it won't overly adjust the cooking time. Next, you want to get a half teaspoon of ground ginger. Add that into your mix right here. And 3 tablespoons of your soy sauce, your coconut aminos, or your soy aminos, depending on whatever you're using. They are all interchangeable. It's just what you happen to have on hand. So, 3 tablespoons. Next, you're going to want to add 1 tablespoon of sesame seeds. Into that same mixture. Then, you're going to want to grab a fork, lightly mix it all up so it forms a nice consistent texture, so you don't got oil, soy sauce, or aminos all separated. You want to make it nice and consistent. can do this with a whisk, but it works just as well with a fork. It will give you this lovely, lovely consistent texture. And then you go ahead and lightly pour over your broccoli, making sure you get as much of it out of your bowl as you can. And then you want to lightly toss the broccoli, ensuring to get as much of the sauce as you can on all of the pieces of broccoli that you have. That way you can get a consistent flavor through each floret of broccoli. So this was the originally intended vegetable / appetizer for this meal. So this one I have not extensive practice with, but I have cooked it before, and it's something I enjoy cooking. I think it comes out delightfully sweet, despite there being no sweeteners. Anyway, so once you get it all nice and mixed in, you're going to want to get a baking sheet lined with aluminum. Spread out evenly the broccoli so that it's not all clumped together, so that it all bakes at the same rate. Our oven is currently at temperature, which means we are able to go ahead and let me just triple check my recipe book real quick. And bake it for 20 minutes. All right, in it goes. Note to yourself, anytime you cook, make sure that you have your racks in your oven. Otherwise you're going to look kind of silly on stream when you go to put something in it. Alright, so that's our first dish for the night. Super cheap, super simple, super quick, super easy. Nothing really to it. So our next dish is going to be our main course tonight. I had a little help picking out this. This is our protein. We are going to be making some crab cakes. I probably should have tried to rehearse these before, because I have never actually made crab cakes. But we shall do our best. I was able to find some crab meat for a fairly decent price. So that's what I decided we would be making tonight. Yeah. Alright, so for this, you will need 500 grams of crab meat, cooked, ideally. If you don't have cooked crab meat, that's fine, but it will add some additional steps and time into your process. So first things first, you're going to want to get 3 green onions, scallions, or sprig onions. These have already been washed, so we can go ahead and skip that step. But once you have your 3 green onions, you're going to want to slice them up into thin slices. So one of the best things you can have in your kitchen is a very sharp knife. That's one thing the Army likes to hammer in at cook school. Make sure you have a very sharp knife, or else, well, you won't be cutting anything. You don't want to cut these quite to the point of mincing, as that would be a little overkill. But you do want them small enough that they will not become the dominant texture in your crab cakes. You want them to be an even texture that doesn't become a burden unto itself. So how's everybody been the last 2 weeks? I know it's been a little cold, at least where I live. Lots of snow on the ground. Alright, so once you get your green onions, alright, so you're going to want to get a mixing bowl. And you're going to want to mix all the ingredients for your crab cakes into a mixing bowl. So this calls for 2 large eggs. Be careful whenever you're working with eggs. You don't want to accidentally get shell in whatever you're cooking. Nothing ruins food better than an eggshell. They add that unpleasant crunch nobody's a fan of. So 2 large eggs. Uh, 500 grams of crab meat, or 16 ounce, roughly, give or take, a couple metric conversions. So I know I'm committing a faux pas here with crab cakes for those of you who live on the East Coast. Unfortunately, I don't have any fresh crab meat, so I just have to make do with what I can buy at the store. If I lived on the coast, this show would be doing seafood almost every single episode, because I love seafood. So you want then you want the green onions, which we already did. 1/3 tablespoon, or in less complicated terms, 1 teaspoon, because 1 teaspoon is equivalent of 1/3 a tablespoon. That's a little cooking shorthand, I know, off the top of my head, of Worcestershire sauce. I love cooking with Worcestershire. It's a fun one. It's very strong and it can easily overpower whatever you're cooking. So you want to make sure you get your measurements right the first time. A 1/4 teaspoon of salt. That's 1/2 teaspoon. Up there. So a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. A 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. A 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder. Both of those are some very useful spices that a lot of recipes, especially Western recipes, end up calling for. So they are one that I highly recommend you keep in stock, so that should they do arise, you don't need to panic and have to pause mid whatever you're doing to go to the store and get some onion powder. 4 grams of fresh dill. I love the smell of fresh dill. With this being the kind of dill that I bought, I am going to want to make sure I wash it before I add it in with the other ingredients. It does have its own root ball. So 4 grams of fresh dill is actually quite a lot. So it's about that much dill. We'll move the rest of it to the side in preparation of making the sauce that we'll be dipping it in. So make sure you wash it carefully so that you don't get any dirt particles in it. Then you're going to want to finely chop it. Again, you don't want this to become the dominating texture in your crab cakes. You want them to have a nice, even texture. Is the camera angle working better this time? So that you're able to see what I'm doing with the mixing bowl and on the cutting board. And last but not least, you want a half cup of coconut flour. This is a bit of an oddball flour. It's one that isn't normally used in recipes, but it is used enough that it's readily available at almost every grocery store, unless you have a corner store-ian that doesn't really have. Oh, sorry, and 1 teaspoon of Dijon mustard. It does not matter if you get the stone ground or the creamy stuff. All it will do is affect how the texture comes out. I think it turns out a little better if you use the stone ground. But it is not gonna kill your. It isn't going to kill your crab cakes if you use it. So next, you're going to want to take another fork and mix it all together, making sure to break up the crab meat into smaller, more manageable chunks. You want everything to mix nicely in together to form a big or a thick batter-like texture to make the cake part of the crab cakes. Had I planned ahead, I would have shredded the crab meat beforehand to cut back on time, but while I'm doing this, I can answer any questions you may have yet, if any of you do have questions that have cropped up. So this recipe for crab cakes makes 6 crab cakes in total. Each one is approximately the size of a hamburger when you make them out, which, in conjunction with the other items we're making, will basically let it all be a full meal. For those of you who are just joining us, we already have our Asian roast broccoli in the oven right now. It has 5 minutes left before it's ready. But yeah, you want to get your crab meat nice and shredded out so that you don't have any huge chunks. You want to make sure you get this nice, thick, battery texture out of it. If you don't like getting your hands messy, or you're cooking for people who have a COVID fear, not that COVID isn't something that should be treated with respect, because it is still an incredibly infectious disease, but I would recommend that you shred your crab meat beforehand, before you start this process, so that you can mix it in a lot quicker without having to get your hands in. Yeah. How's the audio doing tonight? Are we echoey again, or is everything good? I know that's been an issue with us in the past. And as usual, all these recipes will be posted on chefmckay.com as soon as not as soon as the stream ends, but as close to as soon as the stream ends as I can manage. Let me know if you guys would rather have me start posting those recipes before the streams, so that if you want to cook along, you're able to. All right. Yeah, I'm working on getting a better mic, but at least it's not double, right? Or is it still doubled? Okay, I can start doing that. I don't mind. So once you have your crab cakes in this state, you need to add you want to get it a little bit more mixed up, actually. If you need to add more of your flour, you can. Oh, well, I didn't even add a full half cup. I added a third cup. That might be why I don't have the right texture. Oh, and I'm going to pause real quick, because that's the alarm for our broccoli. Looks like our broccoli could actually use another 5 minutes, so we'll go ahead and keep it in there. This recipe for the broccoli, you want to make it have a little bit of char, but not quite burnt. All right. So, once you get the crab cake, or the crab mix, into a compactable format, making sure you don't have any massive chunks of any of the ingredients that went into it, you're going to want to grab another baking sheet, line it with tin foil as well, and shape it into 12 small or 6 large patties and set them aside. Adding more coconut flour as needed to help give it the correct texture. And I do apologize for how impromptu this crab cake recipe is. I really should have tried making it beforehand, but it did fit into my budget for tonight, which, as a quick reminder for everyone who wasn't at the last stream, the budget for this stream was set at $45 for 6 people. Make sure I get that. Yeah, okay. So, I'm going to be making 6 large patties to save space. And then you want to set them onto your tray. I do have a special treat for tonight. We will be making a recipe that I have come up with. So I'm excited to show that one off when we get to it. It is a dessert recipe, so it will be one of the last items on our menu for tonight. It's kind of a niche. It does have jalapenos in it. I know some people will go spicy in a dessert, but trust me, they're very good. Alright. Looks like I made that first 2 a bit too big. So I'm going to actually take half their material and recombine it and make the last 2. And there's our adjusted alarm for our broccoli. And there we have our Asian roast broccoli. It is a very simple recipe, very easy to cook. Very worth it though. Delightfully delicious. Now that we have the oven freed up, we're going to my mistake. We will be using we will not be using the oven for the crab cakes. We will be instead frying them up. So that's going to require a minor adjustment in camera positioning. Not too major of one. I just gotta shift things over so that the camera has a good angle on the stovetop. So I'm thinking, next time I have a dilemma like this, where the initial recipe that I had planned turns out to be too expensive for the set budget, I might leave the decision of what I cook instead up to the Patreon. Do a quick poll and offer like 4 or 5 different recipes to replace it. Does that sound like a fun idea? Alright, we're going to move our camera real quick. Okay. There we go. And then we're just going to move my computer, which is doing the streaming, so that it doesn't get damaged by the heat. Alright. So, you're going to want to this one's a little too big, actually. Alright. So you're going to want a medium-sized skillet. And two tablespoons of a thick butter or butter substitute. I have a butter substitute today. One, two. We'll get that over heat. Medium heat. You don't want it all to burn off too quickly, but you do want it hot enough to be able to fry these crackers. Is that camera angle good? Is everything in frame? So you're not full frying the crab cakes, you are searing them to fry one side and then the other. That way you, I mean, I guess you could fully fry them, but that's a lot of oil and a big mess to clean up. Okay. Let me know if it needs to be adjusted at all. Yeah, it's far enough that I think it's safe. Hopefully. Otherwise, this is going to be a very expensive stream to be doing. Yeah. Fortunately, this stove doesn't have strikers anymore, so I have to manually light it. So, once you get your crab cakes in, adding more of your oil, for lack of a better term, as needed to make sure that the whole bottom of the pan is covered in the oil that you're searing your crab cakes in. And I do apologize that I don't know if these things are going to turn out quite as well as I hoped, but hey, nothing ventured, nothing gained. At the very least, I'll have a reference point on what not to do with crab cakes. That's something I take away from cooking. Even if you mess up, you learn something, and unless you totally carbonized whatever you were trying to cook, which is possible, don't get me wrong, but you still get food out of it, even if it doesn't turn out quite as pretty as you want. I think crab cakes may have been a little ambitious, but hey. Appearance is only appearance is only 1/4 of what you eat. You have the smell, you have the taste, the price, and the appearance. Don't get me wrong, you can have some really, really expensive food. It just doesn't taste quite as good as you can do. So this might end up as just a crab. Crab cakes didn't work out. So it looks like we're doing a cooked crab salad, a coconut crab salad. Since these cakes aren't holding together, we'll try again another day to make them turn out just as good. We'll live. It's not the end of the world. When you cook, make sure if you're an amateur cook, don't beat yourself up if you make a mistake. It's not the end of the world. You'll survive. Even like in this, I was aiming for crab patties. Well, that's not happening because I just couldn't quite get them to stick together. But hey, it's
Are you going to put patties together?
Not the end of the world. Unless you are a restaurant, you don't have to get everything 100% perfect every time. And since this is not a YouTube channel for restaurateurs, I'm not going to shed any tears over having to adjust fire. You know what this would go great over is some rice. I wish I had some rice here to cook. Crab stir fry? Is that a thing? Somebody Google that for me. Smells good, no matter what. Crab stir fry. See if there's a recipe for that. I bet you there is. There's stir fry for everything. Rabbit stir fry. Shrimp stir fry. I think I know what the problem with those cakes were. Is that I didn't have quite enough moisture worked into the mixture, so they weren't going to stick together. I might add water if I do this recipe again. Assuming that this crab salad doesn't turn out right. Well, who knows, I might like this recipe better than the idea of doing crab cakes. So, yeah, I can imagine. Alright, so I'm actually going to grab a bowl and partition this out. This is a lot more crab material than I anticipated. And we are going to properly fry this half. So while I'm cooking, before we move on to potentially the last thing I'm going to cook tonight, if I do have 2 extra recipes planned for after this, if y'all are interested. I have the one that I came up with, and I have a sugar cookie one that's really good. So if you lot who are watching me want to vote on that one, are we doing just the sugar cookie, or are we doing just the pie recipe that I did, or are we doing both? Neither of them takes extremely long, and we'd be able to get through both of them fairly quickly. One does involve jalapenos. If you're not into that, I would vote for the sugar cookie one. If you are into that, vote for the other one. Or if you want to see both, do both. All right, let's try this. Need some egg. So I will be doing this adjusted fire recipe instead of the crab cake recipe online. So if any of you are interested in trying crab hash, or whatever we're going to call this, that recipe will be available. Well, I guess it kind of makes sense to not do crab cakes if I'm doing Asian roasted broccoli. Alright, I'm going to call that done for now. We might fuck around with it a little bit more when we go to sit down and eat with it. We will go ahead and partition it out so that we're not. Anyway, so decision time. I have two additional dishes that I'm ready to make right now. One is a red, white, and blue sugar cookie using blueberries and strawberries, as well as a buttercream whipped topping. Or I have a dish I have come up with called the Mojave cream pie, which is, in my personal opinion, quite delicious. It does require some specialty preparation, so it's not exactly ready to do on the fly, but what do you think? And it isn't a huge issue. I am good to make both. I have all the ingredients to do both. And I'm totally prepared. The specialty? Okay. Anyone else? I know I've got a couple viewers. So I've got some viewers. If you'll, right now we're doing the dessert. If you want to choose between a recipe that I have come up with on my own or a sugar cookie recipe, we currently have one vote for the custom recipe. I am okay to do both. I have all the ingredients on hand to do both. So feel free to say both if you want to do both, although that will probably kick our time out a bit further than what we normally do. I'll give you 3 minutes while I get this workstation cleaned up to decide which of these two dessert recipes you'd rather see. Remember, kids, whenever you're cooking, it is always best to clean as you go. That way you don't have a colossal mess whenever you do go to whenever you do go to cook. Or sorry, when you do go to clean up. All right. Looks like we've only got one participant in chat. That's fine. Squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? So we will be doing the Mojave cream pie. This is a recipe I came up with. At least I think I did. I have yet to see any copycat recipes or recipes that I accidentally copycatted. You want to have your oven set to non-convection bake at 355. You're going to need a mixing bowl. You are also going to, where did it go? Alright, so you're going to need 8 ounces of cream cheese, full fat, so I originally came up with this recipe because I noted that one of my favorite fruits in the whole world, the prickly pear cactus fruit, doesn't really have a lot of recipes to go with it. There's a couple, but not as many as you'd think. And that's a shame because it's such a delicious fruit. It's a little like the guava though. It's got these really hard seeds in it. The first couple times I tried making this recipe, I used the actual fruit itself, which gave it a really, really seedy texture. So I discarded using the actual fruit and went with a puree. So this recipe also calls for 3 de-seeded jalapenos, minced. You want to make them nice and thin. You don't want huge chunks of jalapeno clotting up your pastry. I know I said it's a cream pie, but it's closer to a pastry in terms of actual texture. So 3 de-seeded and well minced jalapenos, green jalapenos too. You don't want red jalapenos. They are a bit too hot. You're not trying to set the world on fire with this one, as much as I love spicy food. So, get it all nice and minced. The trouble with cooking with jalapenos, you want to make sure that you don't, I don't know if this happens to anybody else, but anytime I slice up jalapenos, my eye starts to itch. And so you don't want to rub your eye when your hand is covered in capsaicin. Shit that makes jalapenos spicy. That is, yeah, that's how you get pain. So for those of you just tuning in, we are currently working on the Mojave cream pie, a recipe that I came up with. So for this recipe, you need 8 ounces of cream cheese, 3 de-seeded and well-minced jalapenos, we'll get to the sweetener and the flavoring. As soon as we get these jalapenos all minced up. If you are not a fan of spicy, this recipe is not for you. However, if you're not a fan of intense spicy, you can cut down on the amount of jalapenos you need to mince and do 1 or 2, depending on your level of comfort with heat. I personally love spicy food. I've been accused by people of making things too spicy. Something I wholeheartedly disagree with, but I won't hold it against anybody because I understand everybody's palates are different. This is not a recipe I would give to little children. It is not intensely hot, but rather than risk them having a adverse reaction to the spicy jalapenos within the sweet cream, it is probably best just to give them cookies or a regular cake or a regular cream pie. The recipe for this will be posted on chefmckay.com. If I'm not mistaken, it will be the first version of this recipe on the internet. Something I'm kind of proud of, if it's true. I could be entirely wrong, and I could have seen this recipe years and years ago and just remembered it out of. And if that is the case, I won't be upset. Because, hey, it's not like I'm famous for this. It is just a recipe. It's not the end of the world if I didn't actually come up with it. So who's ready for 2020 to be over, huh? It's been a hell of a year, hasn't it? Alright, I gotta get one attachment for my mixer here before we continue, and one additional ingredient. we are. It's a you! Welcome to the stream, Mr. Collins. Alright, so we've got 8 grams of cream cheese, 3 de-seeded minced jalapenos. Now for the sweetener. So a lot of recipes like to make use of sugar or stevia or any number of sweeteners to make their filling sweet. This recipe makes use of a rarely used, at least in my opinion, sweetener called blue agave syrup. And I think its natural flavor is fantastic for this recipe. So you want 3 tablespoons of it. Some Assaggio cheese. A 1/4 cup. Let me get my measuring cup out. So a 1/4 cup of Assaggio cheese to give a more aged and mature flavor. And lastly, but certainly not least, you need prickly pear cactus syrup. Oh, and some lime juice, which I will have to get out in just a second. You want 3 tablespoons of this syrup. This prickly pear cactus syrup is available on Amazon. It is not extremely difficult to find, but it does require searching for. It is one of those ingredients that, unless you're actually looking for it, you're never going to find it. So while that mixes up, we may need to add a little bit more cream cheese to this. Let me get the lime juice. So, you want to get this nice and creamy, so you do need to run it for a little bit. While that's running, though, we can go ahead and get the crust ready. I'm cheating today by using a pre-made crust. It's just a traditional pie crust that you lightly butter or butter substitute and rub some sage on. So there's nothing wrong with cheating on a crust. Let me try our filling real quick. That is delicious. Probably could use the seeds from the jalapenos to give it a little bit more kick, but I think it turns out fantastic on its own without having to overly rely on the heat of jalapenos. So, you want to get a stone like this and lightly lay out your crust. It's just a standard pie crust. This one is pre-made just to save a little bit of time. I could go through all the steps of making a pie crust from scratch, but that's very time consuming in my personal opinion. So, you want to very, very lightly butter the inside using a butter brush. You don't want to drown the crust. Just enough to give it that nice texture. Just a very light coat. Then, you want to add your filling. Making sure you don't pile it too high, but not too thin that you're not going to get a good filling. Lightly spread it out. You want to have you don't want to curl it to the you don't want to spread it all the way to the edges because you need to be able to curl the edges of your crust up into a nice fold. So I will hold that up here in just a second as soon as I get it nice and even. So you want it to be about like that. That way you have room to fold up your crust and make it look nice and pretty. But you're not sacrificing the fullness of the pastry / cream pie. You then want to lightly fold your crust to give it a very pretty look. Folding it up underneath itself, taking very slow and gentle folds so that you don't rip the crust. And then, so it'll look like this, all folded up. Then, you want to lightly butter the outside edges. If you are using regular butter, make sure you melt it in the microwave first. It's very hard to spread cold butter after all. Again, you don't want to drown the exterior of the thing in butter, but you do want to make sure that you can get a nice golden glisten on it. And lastly, before you put it in the oven, you want a light dusting of sage. Alright, there you have an uncooked Mojave cream pie. Into the oven for 15 minutes on 355 conventional bake. And while that finishes up, I will show you our meal so far. Alright, so here we have our crab hash, attempted crab cakes, but we adjusted fire as needed, and our Asian raw roast broccoli. So, that's, but we'll be, instead, be doing a little bit early so that we can so that I can get some recipes out for you to do your New Year's party with. If you want to do a New Year's party. If you do decide to do a New Year's party, please remember COVID safety guidelines. Don't go getting everybody sick. But with that in mind, I would love to discuss budget with you and figure out just how much we're willing to spend for our New Year's party. So, does anybody have suggestions or comments for our budget? Let me move this camera. Put you right here. A little bit more intimate, a little bit more face to face. So, this is that was the original plan for the New Year's episode, doing finger foods to help take the edge off if you're doing parties. But if there's something you'd rather do instead, I'm happy to adjust fire and we can address recipes as needed. So right now the plan is for me to do a stream on the 29th or the 30th to give you enough time to try the recipe and get the ingredients needed. Before New Year's, allowing you to have these recipes to do on your own. But if we are not partying this year, or if someone has something else they want to try, I'm more than happy to adjust myself and figure out something else to occupy that time slot. I don't believe, even if we're not doing finger foods, that I will be doing a stream on the 2nd. But I won't adjust anything until we can figure out just what we're doing. So, right now, I was going to do bacon wrapped jalapeno poppers, but instead of using cream cheese, you do ricotta cheese and Gruyere, which gives it a more flavorful stuffing. I was planning on doing coconut shrimp. I might do that anyway if we're not doing a New Year's specific recipe, just because coconut shrimp is the bomb. What was the other recipe I had picked out? Hold on, let me pull up my recipe book. A really simple So shrimp is one of those things you have to know where to shop and how to buy. Shrimp can be actually cheap if you know how to buy it. For reference, as far as seafood goes, the crab that was used tonight was cheaper than the original meal item, which was going to be turkey. I do know full well that seafood can get very pricey, though. I live quite far from the coast. I was going to do a cheese pizza. Cheese stuff. A literal cheese pizza. Pizza made with cheese. That one's a very keto recipe. Or paleo, I guess. No, I guess it wouldn't be paleo because it's got cheese in it. it's mozzarella cheese, all folded in on itself, with some almond flour and some cheddar cheese inside the crust. That's something I actually would love to cook on stream. If that's something you guys would be interested in seeing. It looks like we've got about 6 minutes left on our pastry. So for next month, I've got about 4 people in the stream right now if they want to vote. We were going to do a finger foods stream and just do party foods for New Year's Eve party. Well, if I'm doing that, good. It means that the food I made at least looks delicious. This is actually pretty good. I do think it needs a little bit more mustard to it, though. That's good. I could almost see this going well with some tartar sauce, too. So, the total cost of this meal, even with the adjust fire, was about $40. Give or take the ingredient, the agave I needed for the pie. So, plenty of food for plenty of people. We'll let it go another. We'll let the stream run until we get the Mojave cream pie out, and then I'll show you that. I'll give you a taste analysis on it. After that, and in the meantime, while that's cooking, if you guys want to shout out suggestions or budget ranges for a New Year's or New Year's prep part or stream, please feel free to. I do want to keep all these streams budgets under or at $50, so not poverty, but certainly not living the life of luxury. And the goal with all of these streams is to provide enough food for 6 people. That way, because that's the whole concept. It's easy food, good food on a tight budget to help people through these trying times, and just in general, because I've been told by a lot of people that cooking is hard or cooking is expensive. I just made food for 6 people for under $50. Aside from McDonald's or major fast food chains, you're not going to be able to do the same thing. And even at McDonald's, it depends on what you're getting. I don't think you could get 6 Big Macs for under $50. It's all budget food. So, with that said, the price point for next stream, I would like to set at $35. So not overly expensive, but not super cheap either. A flexible budget. Yeah. So I was thinking about $35 for next stream. And I was going to do either finger foods or some kind of soup. Something to help chase off the cold. What would you guys prefer to see? I'm comfortable doing both. And I love to cook, so, it doesn't hurt me anything. There is our pie. Man, I'm just not on the game tonight. That needs another 5 minutes. So finger foods then? Hey, soups are fantastic. It's not their fault they're easy to do. So, beyond the... Alright, so finger foods for next time. Does the coconut shrimp, jalapeno poppers, and... Let's do a sweet finger food. Let's see. Let's do... So we've got two savory items. Let's do a sweet. Any flavors someone would like to see done? Chocolates, or vanillas, or sweets, or ice cream, donuts. Panna cotta. I mean, that would take a long time for me to do, but hey. So. I could do mug cakes out of some ramekins. That would be fun. Strawberry. There we go. There's an option. I could make strawberry shortcake. Ooh, that looks delicious. I could make strawberry chia pudding, or chai puddings, or mini strawberry calfutis. Strawberry ice cream. Strawberry jellies. Or I could do strawberry chocolate bark. Chocolate barks are always fun as a finger food. Get a nice plate full of it. Alright, well, I think I know what we're doing for next time. The cream pie is ready. And here we have our Mojave cream pie. So this is served like any pie, so you just slice it into small slices and serve that portion. And here you are. Does anybody have anything they want to add before we head out? As always, the recipes for this stream will all be posted on chefmckay.com, probably in about 2 to 3 hours. If not, I am going to end the stream here. I've been Chef McKay. Thank you for joining me this stream. Have a good day.